after we know that the basic model, demand and supply model, then we are going to a little bit further regarding what shift or what other factors influence that the demand and the supply. In this case, it's the demand. We're talking about the demand curve. We already know that. But something that we will shift the demand curve. Keep in mind, shift the demand curve to the right, or it can also shift it to the left, both sides, but depends on factors, different factors. For example, in this case, that if we are talking about this is one of the shifting demand, so a very good example is income. For example, you win a lottery. So if this is like the property, real estate market, if you win a lottery, very likely your demand curve shifted to the right. Why? Because you have more money. And then you can buy maybe not one, you buy 2, 3, new houses. So this shifts to the right. But on the other side, if that the pandemic caused people lost their jobs and then they have to decrease their consumption, even to like for the leisure time, like if they go out for example, that they visit, for example, go to the Orlando all the time go to those theme parks, and then all of a sudden they have to shift their demand curve to the left because they have less money now, so it stopped or they limited their traveling. And if we are talking about that, those factors, very likely here that to give you several examples. Usually I would ask you to tell me what shifted the demand curve, but in this case that no one will respond. So I just tell you that it's not only those factors, but it will be much more than that. Income, right? You have changed your preference, your taste. Also like, the population change, I mean, the number of consumers change. More consumers, that very likely the demand will shift to the right. For example, if we compare, the population China and then the US, very likely for the same, let's say just for example, like for pizza, right? The demand for pizza in China must be much greater than the demand of pizza in this country because of the population. Okay, also it's related to the price of substitute or complementary products. So this can be easily to interpret by, for example, like the pizza. If we have pizza, now the hamburger price is much cheaper, or let's say other food price is very much cheaper, then people all of a sudden they will reduce their consumption of pizza, right? And then also this is related to the expectation about the future. This is very, I like this this example is because if we are, if we believe like that the pandemic will, let's say, extend a little bit longer, people will stop their purchasing of, purchase the property. That means the property demand, the demand curve for the property, for the real estate will shift to the left at this moment because they are, I mean, they just have the concern for the near future and that they don't know what happened, or they think that the demand will be further decreased. You need to think about it, related this to our real life, not always like talk about the pizza, hamburger, those things. You need to really, why I discuss this real estate, because it's more affected to your life. Happy wife, happy life. So I always like to use this is because you will see that if you have a big house, you have a happy wife, your life will be much greater, right? So I mean, I keep this here, but you can kind of relate it to this later. If we're talking about this shifting of the demand curve, as I said, it can be to the right, and then also it can be to the left. It depends on increase income or decrease income, right? So most of the time, if we're talking about the shift to the left, meaning decrease. Why? Because at the same price, for example, at the same price here, you have lowered your quantity demand, you lower the quantity, right? So that means it's reduced. Here, some of like this, this terminologies, you might already see that normal goods, inferior goods, substitute, complement goods. So this should be covered in the microeconomics class. Take a look and understand those things. I just show you like the factors, use, let's say those equations. So here is the quantity demand. Here is the price. This can be the income. M is the income. And then this is for other, let's say, substitutes and complementary goods, right? And then here is the tau is the, let's say that the preference or taste, and the N is the number of consumers. So this is the equation to tell you how I can draw this demand curve, okay? This negative slope of the demand curve or downward slope of the demand curve. So understand that the previous diagram only show you two factors. One is the quantity, one is the price, but not others. The others is shifting the curve, okay? All factors shifting the curve. So you needed to understand all this is, like say, those factors. But honestly, those are not all factors will affecting those demand. There are much more than that, okay? So this can be much longer. And then also, if I talk about the coronavirus pandemic, I can add one more factors, right? If I added some of the government policies, monetary policy, this can be one more, okay? So this equation can be long, but honestly, we just keep as very simple, use the first couple, let's say, factor to analyze the situation. Next slide just show you the direct demand function, which is, as I said, the quantity and then the price relation together. This is showing the law of demand using this. I don't spend a lot because this is I use the most those information from for this microeconomics. I would go ahead to tell you about the supply curve. All right, the supply curve is, as I said, this is upslope or positive sloped curve. And then once the price up, the supply or the producer, they have the motivation to produce more. This is the logic behind that. But also there's possibility to shift the supply curve. One of shift, although the arrow is go up, but also I would say that this is shifted to the left. The other side is shifted to the right. It's easy, it's consistent with the demand curve. All right, shift to the left is decreased supply. Why we say this decreased supply? At the same price, for example, P0, right? If the same price, if this supply curve go up or go to the left, you will see the quantity is much lower. Shift to the supply curve to the left, this is the reduce of the supply, okay? The reason can be different reason, but the one very, let's say that we use most often is due to the input price increase. And then also, like, if in this case, this is the opposite, the shift to the supply curve to the right. That meaning that, for example, if we have, let's say that the reduce of the crude oil price, so reduce of the input price, this is more like they save the cost, right? They save the cost, they can produce more. So in this case, this is also like we can use like the labor price, like the minimum wage. If we have the minimum wage lowered, then this can very likely shift to the right. This is the also the shift of the supply there, including like here you see that the import price and then also the technology. Most of the time, the technology will shift our supply curve to the right. Why? We have higher technology, we have high productivity, and then it's also increase of the production efficiency. And then this is very likely the supply curve can be shifted to the right. But the natural condition, most of the time, natural condition is decrease our supply. Why? Just imagine that either the let's say the drought or let's say the flooding of, those natural disasters, this will reduce the supply curve or reduce the supply, shift the supply curve. Also, like this curve show you like it can be two sides. All right, so shifting of the supply curve or moving along the supply curve or the demand curve, those important factors are behind it. And then you needed to understand the root cause. It's more like the supply, right? The equation of the supply function, so that the quantity supplied, and then we only use this price and then the quantity supplied, you know, for our previous, let's say, the previous supply curve. But there are also other factors. So we can put like the natural condition here. We can put the, let's say that also the pandemic impacts here, so many things. So these are all, let's say, just trying to come up with an equation to analyze those information. Just keep in mind that this can be very complicated. We use this simple version. So yes, let me stop here. And then we continue our, let's say that our discussion later for, let's say this is a review session. We don't, you know, really spend a lot of time on that. But let's see that what we have for the next class. Have a good one. See you later.